Okie dokie. So I was meant to do this part last time, but I forgot.
Hey,
This is Colin Thompson interviewing Gregory Grant on the 14th of December. So we can get started whenever you're ready.
okay.
So, to start with, let's have your full name and date of birth, please.
Gregory O. Grant, 2 August 1948.
So, you were in the Navy.
I was in the Navy.
So, what was your rank when you retired? Or
Oh,
left
did
the
not
Navy?
retire when I got out. Like I tell people, I spent 3 years, 11 months, 26 days, 20 hours in the military. And I was an AT, which means Aviation Electronics Technician, and I obtained the rank of E4.
So, could you tell me a little bit about what exactly an ET does in the Navy?
Oh, no, not ET, AT.
Oh, AT.
No, there is an ET. Okay, now the difference is AT, of course, is aviation. ET is the rest of the Navy. And we deal with what is known as the black boxes. We deal with the equipment that makes whatever we're working on function. When I originally went in, the ATs were divided into two groups. You could either be an ATN or an ATR. ATR said that you worked on radar equipment. ATN said that you would do navigation. And before I got out, they got rid of both of them. And so it was just the rank of AT. And what you do, like I say, what you do is to work on the black boxes that are in the plane. Not the electricity to feed it, but just the boxes and any wires that connect any two boxes together. And basically you did the maintenance upkeep on those. My last duty station, which was probably my best, I worked in a facility there which was very unique because the squadron that I was in, because of the type of work that we did, the planes could come off of a mission and they would say, well, we need a piece of equipment to detect this signal or that signal or whatever, and we built it. So I was in an organization called Special Projects, of which what we did was we built specialized black boxes.
So, what were some of you mentioned that was your last one, and
Yeah.
your favorite one?
That was my, well, prior to that, by being in the military basically 4 years, it's kind of funny because I tell people I was in the Navy, but I was not a sailor. In the 4 years that I was in the military, I never went on a ship. So that's why I say I never was in the Navy. Prior to going to, that particular squadron is called VQ1, and which is, we were a reconnaissance squadron. And we detected different little signals that were being displayed at the time. And we knew when certain things were cut on and when certain things were cut off. And depending on what was cut on, we could give warnings to Allied aircraft that was in the area. So we did, there are two types of ECM, which is electronic countermeasures. You have active countermeasures, and then you have passive. We worked on the passive because all we did was detect. Active is when you react to the signal and you get rid of it. When that happened, I was in a squadron that is known as VQ1. And we, just before I got in the squadron, they moved the home port from Atsugi, Japan to Agana, Guam. But I spent 95% of my time in Japan. And we had debts, and which is a detachment from the main group. We had debts in Korea. Of course, we had debts in Da Nang, Vietnam. We had debts in Thailand. Plus, we had debts aboard aircraft carriers. So we all did the same identical thing, that type of thing of detecting signals.
And what year was this?
The years I was in service or the years that I was in that squadron?
Both.
Okay, it's kind of funny because last night I was looking at something. I received my draft notice in around September, October of 1968, of which it indicated that I was being drafted by the Marine Corps. A lot of people say the Marines don't draft. Well, I got a piece of paper that says otherwise. At that time, I basically quit school. I should have went ahead and finished because at the time we were on the quarter system and I would have been able to have one more quarter under my belt. But I quit school, and it's so funny because I can remember the when I got the notice. I think it was a Saturday morning. I had been out kind of late, so I was sleeping in, and I was laying on my left side, just like this, and all of a sudden I felt something being slid under my nose and my face, in between that and the pillow. And when I jumped up, it was my dad, and he had this sheepish grin on his face. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he handed me the envelope and said, "You've been drafted." So that's how I found out I was being drafted. And like I said, I quit school and started bumming around, asking him for information, and he would not tell me anything. He would not advise me one way or the other. And finally, what he told me was, do not go in the Army, do not go in the Marines. So that left Coast Guard, Air Force, and Navy. Well, I went to the Air Force recruiter, and the Air Force recruiter looked at my record, and he saw where I had passed the Air Force exam when I was in high school. So he told me, since you've passed, we'll use you as basically a filler. That meant was, if they sent 7 people to be inducted, and we will say they required 4 people to pass out of the 7. If 4 or more pass, then I would turn around and come back home. If 3 or less pass, then I would step in. So I would be like a yo-yo. I would never know when I was going to leave. So, which wasn't bad. Then I went to the Navy recruiter, and the Navy recruiter told me, he said, "You'll be home for Christmas, but you won't be home for New Year." And then he started laughing and said, like, you got a choice, because he knew that I'd been drafted. So I accepted that. And that was in December. Actually, it was in December of 1968. I went into boot camp, which is coming up on my 53rd anniversary of when I went into boot camp. We went into a brand new boot camp facility in Orlando, Florida, and it's kind of unusual to think of Orlando in the Navy. And you can't get more landlocked. But we had a brand new boot camp facility called RTC, which is Recruit Training Center, Orlando. And we were there for 9 weeks training. And And that was on, I said the oath going into the Navy on the 30th of December, 1968 in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, Columbia. And March the 7th of 1969, we graduated. And I went from being a boot to, I guess, a sailor, because many of us left and went to the fleet, whereas I left, came home for I think 2 weeks on leave, and then I went to, here we go with another landlocked place. I went to Memphis, and well, actually Millington, and we had a training school, okay? When I was in boot camp, that's when it was detected that I had more of an aptitude for electronics and aviation. So the particular school there was the aviation, what we call A school, which is your primary school for learning basic, whatever your field is. And mine was electronics. So we went there and I stayed there for, I think, 6 months. And when I left there, I got a gravy train job. I went to San Diego. And of all places to go, I went and was working with, I became a chauffeur, but with an airplane. I got on the flight crew for the admiral of the Atlantic Fleet.
In San Diego?
In San Diego, at North Allen. And what was funny about that is because the admiral could be called off at any time, we were on duty or on call 24/7. So because we were on call 24/7, we couldn't stand watches. So the time I was there, I didn't stand a watch. You know, put me in that briar patch. And what was unique about that is, like I say, whenever he wanted to go someplace, we'd get the plane together and we would fly. Now the plane that we used in the 1950s, President Eisenhower flew on an airplane by Lockheed, what was called a C-121. It's called a Super Connie or a Super Constellation. We call it a Connie, it's short, but it's a Super Constellation. And that's the same type of plane that we used in the West Coast that we flew the Admiral around. While I was there, my basic duties was a gopher, since I was the junior person in the squadron, plus I was the newest person in the squadron. So, and what would that mean? Well, I may be sent to supply, and while I'm on my way to supply, they have made the telephone call to say, okay, we got a dummy coming over there, and he wants 75 feet of shoreline. Now, you know what the shoreline is, right?
That's like rope this thick, right?
See, we'd have loved you. Shoreline. No, that's where the water comes up at the beach. So we go to supply, and hey, Chief so-and-so says he needs 75 feet of shoreline. And just so happened supply, oh, we just gave the last to Squadron so-and-so. You got to go over there to get it. So as soon as you jump in your vehicle and start going, there's the telephone call. We got a dummy coming for some shoreline. Or either you go and get prop wash. You know what prop wash is? When you got, okay, our plane had propellers. We had 4 propellers. And when you're got your propellers going, if it's raining anything, the afterblow out of the back end is your prop wash. So you may be sent over there to get 5 or 6 gallons of A prop wash.
So this is effectively the naval equivalent to headlight fluid.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so it's all of that type of thing. So being the junior person, I may have gotten into some of those. Other than that, it was basically maintenance on the airplane, making sure that it was always up, washing. With the Connie, it had a tendency when it flew, it would not hold the fluid very well. You would get streaks of oil coming out, and so there was a material that we used to wash it. Oh my gosh. Do not, and of course we did not use goggles when we washed the plane, and so anything that dripped down, any place on your face, you felt it in your eyes. But that was the basic duty that I did there. Now, something just came to my mind. The Admiral wanted to go west, which we call a West Pack. And he had some business in Japan, Hawaii, and places like that. So we got to either Midway or Guam, and we were refueling, and we were putting oil in the plane. And I knew enough about it that when I was on the oil, that if you let the oil get too far in the neck, and even if you cut it off, it would still run out, and that's a mess to clean up. So I'm on the oil, I'm pumping, and I got my finger down so I can feel the oil so I know when to cut it off. And I'm noticing all the guys that are refueling with fuel, they have finished and they're leaving. And I'm still pumping with my finger. The next thing I know, I'm the only one left on the plane. And I'm still pumping oil. So I stopped and I got on the wing and I looked down and I asked the guy, I said, "Do you see oil leaking?" He said, "No." And he's like, "Why?" I said, "How much oil have I put in here?" He jumped on the truck, looked at the register. "Oh, you got 125, 130 gallons. I said, "You sure you don't see any oil?" He said, "No." I said, "This plane don't hold but 65 gallons bone dry. Where's the rest of the oil?" So what he did was he took the truck back to maintenance, and he found out that I've been pumping air. So he brought me a truck that worked, got the oil filled up, and of course, once we got in the air, I became the gopher again. Guys, do you see how nice we are flying? We are flying very light, no bumps, no nothing. And then somebody would crack, "Oh, I wonder if it's some of that air that Greg pumped into the plane." So you never get, let down. So when I was there, that went very well. And what happened was me and my commanding officer stopped seeing eye to eye. During the time that I was in the Navy, we had an admiral, which was the CNO, which is the Chief of Naval Operations in Washington. He is control of all naval operations. And his name was Admiral Zumwalt. And he started making little rules and changes that we call Z-grams. And one of the things his Z-gram was, at that time, was if you kept it nice, you could have a beard. You could wear your hair a little bit longer. And, but because I was on the Admiral's crew, those rules did not really affect us. I could not have a beard. My hair had to be a little shorter. And what was beginning of the end was like I would go get a haircut on Monday, and Wednesday, you need a haircut. I'm like, I just got a haircut. Then by me saying I just got a haircut, now I'm arguing. So that started happening. Then I just got that don't give a attitude, and I didn't stop getting a haircut. And what happened was I got my commanding officer wrote me up. And the way he wrote me up, I should have been court-martialed because he wrote me up as for insubordination. So I got transferred once again to the headquarters building, the back building of where the admiral's office was. And the day that I was assigned, I had to go to the leading chief of our organization, and he was the highest ranking enlisted person that we had at that time. And he was on the telephone, and he looked up at me and said, "Just a minute." And then he got off the phone and he hung up the phone and he just laid back in his chair and put his arms up. And at that moment I said, "Whatever you say, stupid, I'm going to the brig because I'm coming across this desk." So he asked me to turn around slowly. And as I turned around, I could just feel myself tightening up. It was like a spring. I was coiled. And like I said, I'd made up my mind. This is it. This is the end of my career. I'm going to the brig. And when I got all the way back around and I was facing him, what he said next, "You could have taken a feather and knocked me over." Because what he said was, "I don't see nothing wrong with you. As a matter of fact, I wish half the darn base looked as neat as you are." He said, I see what this is. I understand what this is." He said, "I'm going to give you a job." He said, "You don't have," I think I had probably about 9-10 months left at that duty station before I got transferred. He said, "I'm going to give you a job that is a meaningful job. It's not just a filler job." So he put me in an office. The only problem with that particular job was I had to wear whites all the time. It was an office, and whereas before I was in my work uniform, which is blue jeans and a blue work shirt. So I had to kind of, be spiffy a little bit. But the job that I was given, I helped develop a brand new program. And this particular program was I ran the data on all the A-7 airplanes, which was a fighter plane that was in the Navy in the Pacific. And that was from California to Japan, whether or not they were on land base or carrier, anything. And I had the serial number of every black box that was on every plane. I had every serial number of every black box that was in a squadron. And I kept the up-down time. Basically, I was running statistical analysis of that particular aircraft. And because of my program, I heard later that the East Coast developed a program the same as mine, or they used that one, and 2 airmen got sent to Leavenworth because of it. And what happened was they had a plane, they were out on a flight, out on a mission. They had a A-7, they could get it ready in the hangar bay. Then when they put it on the elevator and they bring it up to the flight deck, it would go down. They couldn't launch it, so they had to put it back. And this plane had been doing that the whole cruise. There was a pilot from another squadron who came on that ship, and I don't know how long he was going to be there, but these 2 brain surgeons decided, we'll paint this old plane, our plane, just like his plane, and give it to him. And I think what they had hoped was when the plane launched, this is only speculation, this is how I think they were thinking about how they were going to get away with it, that when this plane launched, it would get so far out and the plane would develop the problems and the pilot would punch out and we'd pick up the pilot and, you know, everything be hunky-dory. But being a very good pilot, he made it back to his area. And once they started running the information, they started realizing the numbers that's on these black boxes don't belong to us. We don't have any records of any of these boxes. And then when they ran the numbers, as they say, you know what runs uphill? That S word? Well, it ran uphill to the top, and then it started rolling back. And they were down, they were the two on the bottom. So they basically were put in jail almost like for attempted murder, for taking the life of a pilot in their own hands. So my program, who had tracked these numbers, once they ran the numbers, then they realized, oh, these numbers are off of such and such aircraft carrier. That's just happened to be where you just came from. So that was a program that we had there. And then when I left there, that's when I went to VQ1. And VQ1 was the type of squadron I had never heard of it. And I went to one of the warrant officers that was in our division, and I showed him my cards and my orders, and I said, what does that mean? And he looked at me and said, do not volunteer for flight duty. And like, why? He said, because when they go on a mission, they go armed. And nothing comes off the airplane. You don't allow nothing to come off the plane. So I'm like, okay. So I went to Japan to VQ1. And I found out it was, well, it's worse than that. I went to Guam. I spent about 2-3 weeks on Guam. You remember he told me not to volunteer for? I was volunteering for everything to get off of that island. When I got to Guam, I asked them, what is it to do? And they said, kiss coconut trees. Because the trees are here and they come up and they got all the, and after a while, it started looking kind of decent. So and the Guamanian females at that time would not date Americans. The gentlemen were male Guamanians, well, had something to do with it also, but you know, we did not interact a whole lot with them. And so it was that, so I just wanted to get off the island. To give you a little idea about VQ1, are you familiar with the Pueblo? It was a reconnaissance ship that was sailing off the coast of Korea. Around 67, early 68, and North Koreans came and attacked it and took the crewmen into North Korea. Within a year's time after then, we had, as a matter of fact, it's that airplane that's right there, the C-121. The difference is we had a big radome under the bottom. We had a big hump radome on the top. And of course, these were radar. And this particular plane was flying about 30 plus miles off the coast of China. And 2 Chinese MiGs came and shot down an armed plane. There were 32 people aboard. Out of the 32 people, I think they only recovered maybe 3 bodies. So we had that incident. And the latest incident that the world started hearing about again, it's been about, within the last 10 years, there was another aircraft who replaced the Connie, which is called a P-3. It's a patrol plane, and this particular, it's a Lockheed plane also. It's a Lockheed Electra, and it's 4-prop, turboprop aircraft. Well, this particular plane was flying its mission, and Chinese MiG had a hot dog pilot, got too close to the P-3 and bumped it. He ran into it. And when he did that, he lost control of his plane and he died. Our P-3 was so damaged, at first they were trying to get back to friendly territory, but they could not do that. So the word went out, get rid of stuff. So before they landed, they sat there and, did what they had to do, and they ended up landing in China and, took a little vacation. And I forgot how long they were captured in China. They gave the crew back, they gave the plane back. Well, we had to put it back together, of course, but that plane, the last I heard, it went back in the fleet. So I think it went up to Marietta, where one of the Lockheed facilities was, and they rebuilt the plane, so they put it back in the fleet. So that was some of the things like we did in Japan. So. And we had an aircraft that was called an A3, and we knew it as A3D, Sky Warrior. The nickname, or the little ruse, and was like, if you flew a Connie, the first thing somebody would ask you, and this is how they would determine whether or not you actually flew a Connie. What type of engines were on a Connie? Connie had 3350 engines. I think it was a 12-cylinder or 28-cylinder engine. So, okay, so you know something, you on Connies. And like with the A3, which was kind of unique, is the Connie is too big to land on an aircraft carrier. The replacement airplane, the P-3, it's too big to land on an aircraft carrier. So we had to have a plane to land on an aircraft carrier, which was the A3. In other words, it had a tail hook. A3D. You know what A3D stands for? All three dead. To get into the plane, there was a ramp under the bottom. If you went in wheels up, you weren't going to use that ramp. And the only other opening was a door on the side and above the cockpit. If you came in hard, then there's a very good chance that those engines would have twisted and may have blocked the door. So the only way out would have been through the hatch. And by the time everybody got in a line to try and get out through the hatch, the rest of the crews, they were gone. So that's why the A3, all three dead came about. But like I say, it was real good duty. We built black boxes both for, at that time when I was there, we had the first two P3s. And so we had two P3s and a whole bunch of Connies and the Sky Warrior, the A3s. So that was our main two planes that we worked on, and we provided special equipment for all three planes.
What sort of equipment?
The black boxes, whatever detection devices that they needed. They may, hey, we need something to work in this particular signal range or this particular frequency and this and that. And what we had was we had an electronic engineer who was our little artist, who would draw up the schematics. And that's what, when we built the box, all we were given were schematics. When I say built the box, we went and looked at the schematics, and we actually picked out individual resistors, capacitors, transistors, whatever we needed. ICs were just getting in, so we would sit there and a lot of times we even cut our own breadboards to make them work. So when I say we built, fabricated, that's what we did. We fabricated black boxes. We even bent the aluminum for the box, because all we had was this table and a schematic. And you went and picked out everything, and after you made your boxes, depending on how much stuff it is, then you determine how big your black box was actually going to be. But of course, it always had to be able to fit inside the racks. That was the only determining. It could only be so wide because it had to slide into racks so you could lock them in place. But the rest of the design was yours. And that was fun. And I really didn't realize how much fun it was until I'd been out of the military probably about 5-6 years, maybe even longer. Then all of a sudden I realized that, I had really had a good time there. And at that moment, I probably would have gone back in, but I never did. So the 4 years. So join. It's an adventure.
So I just wanted to circle back around a little bit. You mentioned that when you got your draft notice, you then went shopping around for who you could presumably enlist with to avoid the draft for the Marines.
Well, at that particular time, in 1968, and that made me think of what I'd said earlier. I found something last night. In 1968, if you got drafted, if you received a notice that you were getting drafted, at that time, as long as you enlisted into a military program, that overrode your draft. So if I went into a reserve unit or National Guards, anything, that would stop me. That's why so many of the pro football players during that time, and even the ex-president, got deferments. If you had enough money that you could get a doctor to sit there and say, hey, he can't walk. But yet still, I just saw you out there running a marathon, but you can't walk. But, this would keep you from out. And at that time, I was able to join. Now, what I was talking about, I looked at yesterday. In 1969, the military started something that was called the draft lottery. And from what I noticed, 1 December 1969, they had the lottery. And what they would do is they would take 366 numbers, and they would put in the bowl. But these numbers are monthly. Okay, like the day would be 14 December. That would be in the bowl. 13 December, 12 December, and they would pull it out. The one article I read that said they used the first 120. Another article I read said they used the first 195. It didn't matter to either one with me because August 2nd was number 45. So that meant that I was going into the military. Now the difference is when they had just a normal draft, as long as you got into a military component before your draft date, then you're fine. With the lottery, once your number was picked, you were SOL. So you went there then where they sent you. So that was one of the differences, and I was kind of glad because at that time, and I was in San Diego, so that was pretty good.
So another thing I wanted to link back to, you mentioned that you and your commanding officer stopped seeing eye to eye. What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, like I said, number one, like with the hair. I don't know, but I think I know what it was, I don't, I'll just go ahead and say it this way. My commanding officer in the 1960s, the conditions in this country and in the world were not the best in the world. My commanding officer was from Alabama. One day at work, I had a friend of mine who was, at that time, they were called Navy Waves, which is the female version of the Navy. Not today, they consider that as an insult to be called a wave. But in
Do you know what that stands for? I assume it's an acronym.
It's a woman's something other, volunteer service or something other like that.
Probably maybe auxiliary.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. And she had to go to Balboa Hospital. She came and asked the commanding officer, could I get off to take her to the hospital? And he said yes. Nothing seems bad with that, right? That's all normal, right? Until you look at the fact of she was white and I'm black in the 1960s. And I think that was the beginning of the end of me being on there. So everything I did from then on, he found an excuse for, that I wasn't doing it right. And like I say, when you sit there and you read the way I was written up, that I stopped taking orders, that I refused to take orders, that's insubordination. If I was doing that, then why wasn't I court-martialed? And I think this is what happened when I went to the leading chief and he sat there and looked at me. He said, I see what this is. So everybody in the Navy was not racist, I'll put it that way. There was a lot of racism going on during that particular time in the military. During that period of time, I don't know if you've ever heard about the riots that was on the Kitty Hawk and the Constellation. We had riots like that. I'll never forget, it was a Thursday night, and the reason I know it was a Thursday night because it was a country and western night. That's when they did country and western music at the EM Club, Enlisted Man's Club. It was the week in between payday, and so nobody had money. And there was a little rec room that had one or two pool tables, and in the main part of the club were white guys with their dates. In the rec room were basically blacks and one or two white guys who were sitting in there. And the only thing we were doing was playing pool, drinking. And the only time any of us would leave out of that area was either go to the bathroom or go back up to the bar and reorder. And all of a sudden somebody walked in and said, y'all must be in here raising hell tonight. And we're like, what are you talking about? The club was surrounded by shore patrol. All of us from the rec room, all of us from the club, we all went outside together. We stood there looking at everybody like, I don't know why y'all out here. We're not doing nothing. We all kind of got tired of watching them watch us. So we turned around, laughing, going back into the place like we were. Right after then, within 2 weeks after then, the commanding officer of the base put out an order that no more than 5 blacks could walk on the base together. I don't know if you realize it, but in the military, if you got a friend, I got a friend, and we get in a fight, depending on how they want to bring about the charges, do you realize just because there's 4 of us, that can be considered as a riot? So this is the type of mentality they would use that card whenever they want to. And like I say, it was some trying times. So It was good times, but then again, it was a lot of unnecessary BS going on too. At that particular time, to show you the mentality of the military, is that a a Filipino, he could be a cook, which is a commissariman, or he could be a steward. And a steward is a valet for an officer. He could be a steward on a ship, on some of the larger ships, and all he did was cater to this high-ranking officer, the admiral or the XO. That's the only thing they could do. Then, during the time that I was in San Diego, they kind of changed the rules to where there were certain positions they would allow them to become work on the engines. Now, the difference is, in the 50s, leading up to mid to late 50s, it was the same thing for blacks. A black person could only be a steward or a commissariman, a waiter. So that's why I say the whole concept and start changing. And so it, hopefully it's got to the better. So that's where and why I feel like why things went south with he and I. Like I say, I would like not to think so, but that's the only other thing. Things didn't change until she came for me to take her to the hospital. So, happiness.
So where you mentioned that you went to Japan with the special unit. Is that considered a deployment or?
Yeah, that would. Yeah. In one sense, it was no. Our debts would be deployments. I just changed duty stations. Okay, it's just like gentlemen here at Fort Stewart. They're here for 5 years. At the end of that 5-year term, they leave Fort Stewart and then they go to Fort Rucker. And that's what happened with me going from San Diego to Japan. Now, within that change, if we were sent out to like the spokes on a wheel, then those would be deployments. Those would be our debts, and that's what the debt basically stands for, debt. And like I said, we had the debt in Vietnam, in Da Nang. We had a debt off and on in Korea. We went into Thailand, stuff like that. And of course, the debts on the aircraft carriers. And that's because they had the tail hooks, so they could land. But I never went on a ship, so I didn't get to enjoy that part of the military.
Okay, so when you were like in Japan or even in one of the debts, how would mail delivery work?
On an aircraft carrier, okay. On an aircraft carrier, there is a particular plane that we call a COD, and I think it's called a C2. It's a Greyhound also. It's the pickup truck of the Navy or of the fleet, and they would fly back and forth from ship to ship to get your mail, and it would come in the big, bags that way and be delivered that way. In Japan, there was a time when we flew during the Westpac, when the situation with me putting all the air in the plane. On that particular Westpac, we went into the Philippines so that we could get some free money. We picked up some people from out of the Philippines who needed to go back to Japan, plus mail. So we got the mail put on our plane. We flew into to Da Nang. We let them off. We got the mail off. So the basic way of getting mail was always with the Greyhound. but any other plane who had room would always take mail or could take mail. So that's how you got it there at the fleet. At the duty stations, like in Japan, just came by regular. As you said, I never even thought about how the mail got there, but it would be delivered probably pretty much the same way it may just come commercial. And the one thing I can say was like mail is not nowhere near as efficient with all this modern equipment and all this high-tech equipment that they have today. I remember my mother would get up early in the morning in Savannah. If she went to the post office, say at 8 o'clock this morning, and at that time the mail had something that was called air mail. You paid a little extra and that guaranteed that it would go on an airplane. She just sent it regular. You know when I got that piece of mail in San Diego? There were times I got it the very next day. That's going from one coast to the next. Right now, you cannot get mail within this city, any city in America, you cannot get mail from one side to the next side in one day. But, you know, that's how the mail used to come that way. Then they had a central mail facility that would sort it, and of course, in your address, you had your unit. And see, like in Japan at Tsugi, we had VQ1, we had a Marine Corps detachment of aviation, and I guess pretty much they all stayed together. So all the Marine mail went there and different departments, and it was sorted out from there and taken. And then you had what was known as mail call, and it's almost similar like everything you see in a movie. One person come in there with a letter, okay, so and so, you know, that type of thing. So that's how a lot of guys got their mail. So.
Did packages work the same way?
Oh yeah, same identical thing. Same way. I mean, it did not matter what was sent. It came, the only difference was with a package, just depending on what it was, how whole it was once it got there.
And did packages often come mangled?
I won't say mangled. A lot of cakes that left good would maybe have some little dents or indentations or a little crushed, or cookies may be kind of mashed up together type of thing.
So you mentioned coast to coast, it would get there like within 2 days.
Yes.
What about when you were in Japan or one of the debts? How long would mail take?
For Japan, it would be within the week. What it takes right now to mail something, say from, I'll just say Savannah to Jacksonville, would be about the time or less to go from Savannah to Japan. That's why when I go into the post office and they give me all these excuses, I fire back at them because, you know, you're not efficient anymore. Not efficient. Now, it's kind of funny because in boot camp, we were not officially allowed to receive any packages from home because you were down there. We are transitioning you from a civilian into military. So we're trying to get erased. But our company commander had a softie. He told us we could have packages as long as whatever we got, it was eaten in that one day. Well, we had we had this young man who was from New York who got a package. And the box was a box of cookies, a box of chocolate chip cookies. So since he knew he could not eat all the cookies, hey guys, you want some? Everybody started eating. All, all of a sudden, a couple hours later, now what you have to understand, in the barracks, to protect you for inspections, we may have had 10 stalls. You would clean all 10, but you could only use 2. That way, the last 8 was always clean for inspection. There was a run on the bathroom. And at the time, nobody knew what happened. A few days after the cookies arrived, he received a letter from home. And he obviously was a mama's boy. And in the letter, she said, I know you're not taking care of yourself. So to help you stay regular, I put X-Lax for your chocolate. So from then on, I mean, he could have had, the honey baked ham. He could have had a turkey. He ate that by himself. Because from then on, nobody ate anything from him. So that's the type of things we did. In San Diego, it was kind of funny. It was around mid to late August. I'd call home, asked my mom what was she doing. She said she was getting her stuff together for a fruitcake. And I said, are you going to fix me one? She said, yeah, I'll fix you one. I said, okay, doctor it up for me. I said, okay. And it was probably November, early December. I got my cake. Whole, good cake. And when I got it, I cut a slice, wrapped it all back up in the foil and put it back in my locker and went on. The next day when I got off work, went back to the barracks, I opened my locker, and the only thing I could smell was that cake. And my mom always told me I did not know how to slice a cake. All I know how to do was cut hunks. So I took that cake out and I cut me a hunk. And I wrapped it back up. And in the Navy, you don't sleep on a bed, you sleep on a rack. So I got on my rack and I was sitting there and I'm eating my cake. And all of a sudden, I noticed I got this grin on my face. And I look around the room and I'm like, what am I smiling and grinning at? There's nobody in here but me. That became funny and the smile got bigger. I'm not sure if it was that night or the next day I called home. I said, Mom, I got my cake. Thank you. I think you doctored it up. She said, yeah. I said, how much did you put in there? She said, I only put a fifth. So I was like, okay, now I understand.
That's a lot of rum.
I needed to say nobody else got any of that cake.
I mean, on the bright side, that cake will never go bad.
No. Now, I mean, but to show you how different little stories. Now, one of the most unique stories I've heard about mail were, just think of a female that may be, say, 5'1", very petite. And she's married to some gentleman, 6'6", 6'7", 275, 280 pounds. He's ordering pantyhose to fit him. Okay. The Special Forces, Navy SEALs, they spent a big bit of their time in water. And they would use and wear the pantyhose to keep the leeches from attaching themselves. So can you imagine this little petite woman going into the store, buying a pair of pantyhose to fit her husband, and everybody trying to figure out, we hope you know that these are too big for you type of thing. So you had those type of things going on. So as far as getting mail, it was just like, plus we had a rate, which were postmen. Just about every job that you had a rate for it. Like I said, we did the aviation. Now, when I told you there was an ET, ETs did the same identical thing that AT did, but they would only do it on the shipboard equipment. And now, to be politically correct, you can't use these terms anymore. In the Navy at that time, if I knew that you were in the Navy and I would come up, but I didn't know what you did, I would come up and ask you, and when I use the words, then you can understand why today, to be correct, it's not politically correct to say these things no more. I would ask you, are you a brown shoe or black shoe? There's a time and a place for race, and there's a time and a place for tradition. That's a tradition. Brown shoe meant that you were in aviation. Black shoe meant that you were on a ship. Why? Because naval aviators in their uniforms wore brown shoes. Everybody else wore black shoes. So that's these are some of the things that, like I say, you can't use today. So that's where common sense needs to come in. But just one of those things. Now, another example of things being changed is when we went to A school in Memphis. When you got within 2-3 weeks of graduating, you, in our barracks at least, you would have something that would be called a short shower. Short in meaning you don't have much time left here. Shower meaning just what it said. So you could be coming off of a watch, you got on your whites or whatever, and all of a sudden 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys jump you. And the first thing after you get taken up in the air, then all of a sudden you start feeling people feeling on you. What they're doing is, number one, they're looking for your wallet. Take that out. If you got a watch, anything on, they take that off. And they ask, you got anything else you don't want wet? Because we're going to run you through the shower. That was a tradition. Okay, that's what, harassment now? Hazing? We can't do that now. So these are like the little things that, like I say, common sense don't. And these were some of the fun things that we did, type of thing. But like I say, going back to your mail question, it was pretty much the same. You would get pretty much anything that you could get mailed to here. In today's time, you could get mailed in the military. Depending on whether or not you were on a ship or something, or how far out will be the lingering factor, how long it took it to get there. But that was pretty much the same. And like I say, on the aircraft carriers, the mail was flown out. So
So you mentioned that at least one time you got the boozy fruitcake. So what were some other things that you received while you were serving?
I think a couple of times, like when I was in Memphis, I may have had some clothes sent to me, or that's pretty much, just your regular letters and that's what I had, articles of clothing sent. Now, once I got to San Diego, where I had a little more freedom about what I was doing, unless it was one particular item that I asked for, I had less and less clothing sent to me because, like I say, I had run up the base. I could go to the exchange, or I could go out in town and buy clothes. Whereas in Memphis, at that particular time, we went to school in our work uniform, which was our blue jeans, our boomdockers, and our blue shirt. And at that particular time, the one piece of clothing that we could not have on the base? We could not have blue jeans. The Navy at that time was probably the only branch of the military. I'm not sure about the Coast Guard since our uniforms were so similar, but we were the only branch of the military who could not wear their work uniform off base. Fort Stewart, Hunter, you see people walking out here in fatigues all day. Go out to Paris Island, you see active Marines wearing fatigues. So I don't know today whether or not they've changed since everybody have a similar type of fatigue, but at that time we could not wear our uniform off, and because of that, we were not allowed to have blue jeans. Now in San Diego, it's kind of unique is because your storage area on the ships was so small, a lot of the guys would rent lockers in places where you could put your civilian clothes. So when you got off your ship, you would go over there and get your clothes and put on and go out in town. So clothing for me was the biggest thing that I got, other than my cakes.
So you mentioned a few things, but what are some other things that you saw? Not quite sure what the word is, but your fellow soldiers will go with getting.
Basically the same identical thing. Depending on where you were. Now, like in combat areas, there were certain little items that they would probably try and get. Sometimes they would joke and all of a sudden they would get maybe some whiskey or something like that. But then again, depending on where they were, once again, they could get it. Out in the bush, the big thing was any item. We'll just say, what's your favorite candy bar?
Payday.
Hey folks, we can't find paydays. So all of a sudden, heck, I'm a package, and you got a whole box of paydays. So normally, the folks back home would send you the things that you missed the most. Or whatever it is, you sit there and say, I can't find this anymore. Or I saw this on television, I heard about this, but we can't find it. All of a sudden, it shows up. So anything that could legally be mailed, you could just about get. Normally, because in the barracks, in my barracks especially, when I first got to San Diego, I was in an open bay barracks. And what that meant was that there were, and also in the training school in Memphis, we were in a building, we'll say as long as this building here, and we would take our lockers, and we'd take the big wall lockers, and these would make little cubicles, and there would be 4 people in a cubicle. Now, none of us may even work anywhere near each other, and normally you got your mail where you worked. So by us not being in the same area working, a lot of times you didn't see what somebody else got. Now, like I say, different situations brought about different changes. Now, once we got to like in Japan, where there was one central, they may have had a, well, it's kind of unique also because like the building in the main hangar where we worked in Japan, that hangar was open to everybody, all the plane crews. Where I worked was in a locked area. And unless you had a need to know, or at least you had to have a security clearance to come into our building. You just could not walk into our building or our shop. So when we got mail and stuff like that, it would be handed to us like that. So other than just the 1 or 2 guys in there, you very seldom see it. But most of the time it's whatever it is you wanted or you missed the most that you couldn't get wherever. But once you got into the bigger duty stations, that's why once I got to San Diego, I stopped asking for clothes because there was nothing that I really wanted that I couldn't get there other than my fruitcake. So because after pretty much once you leave the South, nobody even know what a fruitcake is. So other than the term, oh, you kind of nutty type of, that kind of fruitcake. So, you know, the term has kind of changed, but that's the biggest thing right now. Now, coming back, you had a whole lot of stuff sent back. And if you look at that program to catch a smuggler, a lot of stuff came back.
Sent from soldiers home?
Yeah. Yeah. So stuff got sent home that way.
Stuff that wasn't supposed to be sent?
Stuff got sent home that way.
So what about the other way? Did you ever see cases of people trying to send stuff that they weren't supposed to soldiers?
The whole time I was in, I never heard of it other than them chocolate chip cookies we got in boot camp, but but you know, that's just one. Normally, no. I mean, the majority of the times what I've seen has always been from over there back home, and normally that happened when you're getting ready to come back to the States, where you kind of stocking up. So you know, you won't be in a drought when you first get back home.
So what, let me try and word this delicately so you're not ratting on anybody. What sort of things that you might have seen sent home that weren't technically supposed to be sent home?
Okay, well, I mean, it's just like doing the one big thing that everybody talks about and everybody want to say is the blame for not winning the war in Vietnam was the marijuana. A lot of guys was thinking up all kind of ways to send it back because it was, you know, a lot more potent than things that they'd been, you know, used to getting. So a lot of that was sent back. I had heard about in certain situations in Vietnam where some of the harder stuff was sent back. The heroin, the opium, stuff like that was sent back. And they had unique little ways in which they were sending those back. It's even kind of funny because like when we flew from our base in Japan and we flew back to Guam, we had to go through government customs. When I realized that I was not I was coming home, I bought a motorcycle. And there are two types of motorcycles to buy in Japan. There's the ones that are American legal, and then there are ones that are Japan legal. Well, I bought a Japan legal. So he had a special little sticker where he put certain things on there. And I had a kind of sharp inspector. He read this sticker. He said, "This is not right." Like what? He said, "It's not even, the word's not spelled right. It's not worded right." And it wasn't. So they impounded my motorcycle. And I didn't have but about 3 weeks, 4 weeks from the time I landed until I was being shipped out. So I had to get all my stuff packed up. So it was kind of funny. I went upstairs and I was talking to a gentleman. I said, "My motorcycle down there, my pack out date is tomorrow. What I do about my motorcycle?" So he just kind of looked at me and he went in this drawer and he put some keys on his desk. And he just sat there and he took an individual key and just turned it around. And while we were talking, he sat there and said to me, "If just so happened somebody stole your motorcycle, you're not going to say anything, are you?" I kind of looked at it and said, "No, I wouldn't say anything." I said, "Okay." He got up and walked out the office. When he left the office, I grabbed the keys, went downstairs, unhooked the chain that was going through my tires and, my rims and everything, locked it back, went back upstairs and put the key down, took my motorcycle. But like I said, that's kind of getting off the subject, but these are some of the things that happened to him. But like I say, the biggest thing that was sent home during that time, you hear more about the drugs being sent home. I would assume if someone had a particular type of weapon that they wanted, they may have taken it down some kind of way to try and ship it home. But from the war zones, basically, especially out of Vietnam, was mostly the drugs that were sent out of there.
Not to take us too off topic, but I've got to ask, why was that motorcycle Japanese legal but not U.S. legal? What was the difference?
Okay, one is like, if you looked at that motorcycle today, when you look at your speedometer is in what?
Miles per hour, but modern vehicles have the kilometers.
Okay,
as well.
back in '68, it was only kilometer. Mm-hmm. So Japanese bike was in kilometers and American bikes was in miles per hour. We may not have had the same exhaust systems and stuff like that. Plus, what they wanted to do was the amount of money you paid. There was a different amount for bikes that they were paying out of the economy, and then the bikes that were destined for the United States. So that was a big thing.
Okay, I see. So you mentioned that the main mail was letters. I mean, would these have been handwritten? Would people have used a typewriter?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
What was more common?
I only had handwritten. I guess it depended on the where it was coming from. Most of the mail going back were always, like in boot camp, we had a stationary box that had a naval image on the letter, on the paper that you would write around and stuff, or you may have certain things there. It just depends on the people. Like I say, all my letters from my parents were handwritten, and letters that I received from people I was dating, all of those were handwritten. Now, like I say, with other people, it went both ways. So I just normally saw the handwritten letters.
So, receiving letters and packages from home when you were, especially overseas, how did that make you guys feel?
For the majority, it was like, that little touch of home. I mean, because at that time, when it came time for you to leave, and it was, and if everybody knew you were that you were leaving and not leaving, they would think that you were being transferred, and you sit there saying, "No, I'm going back to the world." That was that little umbilical cord back to the world. And well, talking about mail, we had one guy in boot camp, and I think we were in boot camp 2-3 weeks before we got our first mail. We had this one young man, his very first letter was a Dear John.
Just in case, could you explain exactly what a Dear John is?
Dear John, not knowing who the person's name is, it's just a common term. But normally a Dear John is whoever it is you were dating or you thought you loved or who you did love at home is telling you ain't no more. And it kind of goes along with the cadence that a lot of people would sing when they're marching. Ain't no use in going home. Jody's got your girl and gone. Okay, Jody is who she's writing about with the Dear John. And it kind of hit kind of hard when you haven't been gone but 2 or 3 days and she already breaking up. Now you kind of feel kind of stupid because it's sort of like the implication was, okay, you were seeing him while I was there. A friend of mine who was in the Army, who was in Da Nang, who was in Vietnam, and he was a postal clerk. And he said they were handing out mail. It was a mail call. And he noticed this one guy read the letter, and you could just see like all the air was like sucked out of him. And he kind of walked. I think he even said he dropped the letter. And he said something about that was unique. And he followed the guy around the side of a truck. And once he got to the side of the truck, the guy had taken his .45 out and stuck it under. Pulled the trigger. A lot of people did not realize how important mail, it becomes. Because especially when you're in a place that you really, really don't want to be, that is, just think you're in the biggest cave in the world. Then that one little match, you can strike that match. It's not going to brighten up nothing. But with that little match, I'm not in the dark anymore. And that's pretty much like what that letter from home is, That's my little reality that, one, I'm not going to be here always. It's not always that bad, so mail became important. And like, I used to live in Camden County. And my ex-wife, when I got off work, oh my gosh, it was just like I was in the military. Because every afternoon when I got off work and we were together, because my mail came to the P.O. box. And at that time in Camden County, your mail could only be delivered. They didn't have street delivery. It was only at a postal box. I would go by the mailbox to check my mail, and it got so bad. I was so bad with it. She just sat there and, take me home. I don't want to go to the post office. You can go. Just, I was obsessed. And she even asked me one day, why? What is it? And I said, you have never been in a situation where you're only tied to normality is male. It's just that, I mean, it's truly important to you. If there's somebody you really care about and she shows the interest in you, she shows that she's about, that's the only thing you want to hear about. I just want to hear her, see that letter. Depending on how the letter is written, you go back into those moments. There are times where you got a bad situation happening. You haven't gotten a letter in a while, but you got all your old letters, and you know that one letter, and you go back and get that letter and reread it. That kind of lifts you up. That gets you out of the dread that you're in. Mail is important. Oh my gosh, it's so important. It is important.
So, especially during Vietnam, there were a lot of organizations which sort of pooled as a community, pooled and would send packages to soldiers deployed. Yeah. Did you get any, or did you see any people that you were
most of that? Get any? Okay, most of that would go into those that were in country, and in country are those that's in Vietnam. Okay, even though I did go into Vietnam, like I do not consider myself a Vietnam vet. I was a Vietnam era vet. To me, a Vietnam vet are those who actually even though I did put boots on the ground, but that was there for a while. Those type of things went mostly to them. Because like I say, in most of the other bases, you had facilities to where you could go out in town and get pretty much what you want to. Whereas depending on a lot of the units that were in Vietnam may have been in a town, but may have been a small town. Others may have been out in the bush. Now those that were in Saigon and places like that, okay, that's just like being here. I mean, even though you were in a war zone, you were not, excuse me, you're not out in the bush type of thing, so it was a little different. So that's where more of those organized deliveries would be taken, more or less. It's just like the USO shows. More of them were taken into the war zone. Okay, during the time that I was in service, Korea was considered a war zone. If we were married, we could not take our wives with us because it's a war zone. We could, like any other base around the country, you could take your family with you, but not there. It is, from what I've heard, it has changed now. I mean, the families can go, but these are like the little things that happen to a lot of guys. That's what, bring about a lot of changes with them. And like I say, with the young man and the chocolate chip cookies, there's a lot of people who have never been away from home before. And they suffer. So they're, like I said, once again, their only tie to home is that it's the Western, Pony Express. It's got to come bring the mail.
So you would say that these, or the organized package efforts, would you say that they were a morale boost?
Oh, yeah.
A lot like regular letters were?
I would say it was morale boost. It was nothing beat mail from somebody that you want a letter from. That's number one priority. But anytime you got anything, it was better than not getting anything. So that always helped. I mean, morale, yes. I mean, it's kind of funny because when you said that, there is a commercial that comes on right now, and this lady goes shopping, and she does something I don't understand. She gets the Slim Jims, the little sausage long, and there's a box full. Instead of her just taking the whole box and putting in the cart, she sits there and dump them. Why take them out? But anyway, she gets this and she's getting these things, and it's almost like Iraq, Afghanistan. Oh, these socks, these are for you. Foot powder, this, all of us can use this, but here, he's dishing out stuff for his little group. He gets this one letter, oh no, this is mine, type of thing. And those would probably mean a lot more than the big organized. If you got something and you shared it with me and it come from home, oh yeah, no, hey, oh, we family. So, I mean, to us, okay, mom sending that to us. There's a chance I never will see your mom, but that's mom to us because she's sending us stuff, and that means a whole lot more type of thing. But yes, it's even organized, it meant a whole lot. Yep.
So assuming that you had a relative of some kind that was currently serving, what would you, if you were going to put a box together to send to them, what would you send?
The big thing would probably be try and find out, number one, noticing where they are, and talk to someone that knows what they like, and in something that they haven't had in a while, a while. If you sit there and you put in a Ziploc bag that you made these cookies, right on there what it was, because there's a very good chance it's not going to be whole when they get there. But we'll sit there and eat them crumbs until there's no more crumbs. We'll be taking the bag and pouring them out, that type of thing. If your candies, and once again, depending on where you are, socks are so important. I guess just about. I mean, other than civilian type clothes, because if you're in a war zone, you can't get that type of thing. They won't be utilized. But anything that you can send food-wise, stuff like that won't spoil, send it. If you got a young relative that person is attached to, have that person to make personalized card or something. Have them to draw something. Take a picture of that person drawing the card so they can see that they are actually drawing it. Send that with it. Pictures, all of that, yeah. Basically anything from home is going to bring you up. Anything, all within the legality of, what you can send. But then again, if you get creative, well, it's just like perfect example. You know how to make rum balls? Peanut butter, rum, and confectionate sugar. Send some rum balls. Yeah, so, those little things like that. Just about anything you sent, and especially like when the guys were in Afghanistan, anything you sent was going to be appreciated. Anything. Now, just because they're not in Afghanistan, we just say if they're in a place that can be hot. But it's not. It's the same thing. Send, like I say, whatever you want to send. But the more personal you can get it, then that kind of lifts it up a little more. So. but mail to a service person. This is important. It's so important. And if they're not, we'll just say if you're sending mail to a brother or to a sister who was single, and y'all were close when you come home, that means so much. Hey, I'm not being forgotten. Because at certain times when you don't get mail, you can get depression. And that's the one thing you don't want to have in the war zone. Because when you get rid of that don't give a shit attitude, then you do something stupid. And may get yourself hurt or killed, or yourself and somebody else, which is, not good. But like I say, anytime you can get some mail from home, send it. And even the little wacky stuff, something that you and that person only know. We just say if you send somebody a blue and a black sock, that may not, everybody like, what's that? And I'm sending that to you, and you sitting there just cracking up like nothing else. And everybody like, ain't nothing but a blue and a black sock. And when they just say that, you just fall out. Okay. That indicates, you remember the day I was in the rush and I was putting on my clothes and I had to go to this big meeting, and I put on one blue sock and I put on one black sock. And then when we realized it was too far gone and I couldn't change, those kind of little personal things that maybe you and that person only know. And, just to get that little laugh, yeah, I'm still thinking about you. Or either another good example would be, these things that I would do, like, if I knew that you like Jack Daniels, I may peel off a Jack Daniels, let them paste it on a piece of paper and send that to you. And maybe have a picture of a fifth or a quart sitting there, waiting on you, type of thing. Just me and you. And if we got a favorite place we like to go sit, or in the boat, or fish, take it there. Take the picture. Waiting for you. Just me and you. So, like I said, you think all of those special moments that may not mean nothing to nobody else but that person. And a lot of times, the more personal you can make it, the more uplift it is. Definitely. So.
Well, so one thing I've been wanting to ask, but it's not really been an opportunity. I wanted to ask about the various pins on your hat.
Okay.
Could you tell me about them?
Okay, the first one here is an atom with wings. That is the emblem of AT. The atom itself, that is all that an ET would have. He would just have the atom. And when you saw that, then you knew that was an ET. When you put the wings on it, anything that's got wings is aviation. So that is what that stands for. This particular plane here, that's a WV, Willie Victor, C-121. Our plane was a standard super constellation that had been modified with radomes under and above. And like I said, those were for different detection devices. Those same type of airplanes at one time were used for hurricane hunting. There was a squadron. When I got to Japan, they had just combined 3 squadrons into one, and we all kind of sort of did the same thing. I was in VQ1, which was the aerial fair air recon, which is fleet air reconnaissance. We did that. There was VW1. VW1 was hurricane hunters. They were weather planes, which flew the Connies. And then there was VAP, 21, not VAP 21, VAP 61. They were a a photo squadron. VAP flew the A3s, so all of their A3s became converted into our reconnaissance plane. All the Connie planes were already basically set up like the recons we needed, so it was just modified, just maybe removing a couple of black boxes and add. So that is what that plane is. This one, that is actually the emblem of the squadron. Our mascot was the bat. And it's kind of significant, bat and reconnaissance and obtaining information. And this one, that pin is just a Navy veteran pin. But I'm looking, and probably within the near future, I will be getting the other two planes and putting on there. I'll be getting a P3 put on there and a model of the A3 to put on there, because I did work on all three of them. So, and working on planes is, it's something that I'd always done. Not really done, but it's something that I've always had a fondness for. I've always been a plane person, so. So going in there and working on planes, that's just like putting Briar Rabbit in that briar patch, you know. It's just, hey, I really enjoyed that. My dad had a shoe shop on the east side of Savannah, and there was a young man that lived in that area, and he, all his life, the only thing he wanted to do was fly. But when he did get the opportunity, when he went in service, he was colorblind. So he
A friend of mine has that exact problem.
So he could not sit front seat, he could sit back seat. And it's just like taking that pin, sticking it into that balloon. At a young age, from the time I was 6 months old until I was 5 years old, I went to work every day with my dad at the shoe shop. And at that time, there were more propeller-driven planes. And I could just sit here. He had me to the point where I could just sit here and just listen to the engine, and I could tell you what kind of plane it was. I said, that's so-and-so. No, it didn't. When you go out there, there it is flying. So that's just how, I guess, it was put in the cards many years ago that I was supposed to go into aviation. And I guess the thing that got me with the Navy was they had an open house of some submarine that came into Savannah. And I went aboard, and there was something about the way I went down the ladder, and the sailor that was on the deck to catch you or whatever told my dad, that's the sailor right there. It was something about the way I came down the ladder that's the way they would do it. So that's just, I don't know where I got it from. I can't even tell you what I did now. So, but that's the sailor. So I got branded there. So. But yeah. I'm trying to think of something else that happened stupid with mail. But normally that's what happens. You get, like I say, many times, especially going into the war zones and stuff like that, it takes an extra set of hands delivering stuff. And I worked at the post office as a mail handler, which is in the backside. We would take the mail and salt that's coming off this conveyor, and we'd put it into a bucket to go. And my first night when I worked there, the first thing I told my wife when I got home that night, handle with care, fragile don't mean nothing. And I'm not talking about the workers throwing your stuff. I'm just talking about the machinery, because if something got backed up, it could fall off and this and that. So like, when you pack it well. So. But it's a unique job. But anybody that's in the military, they love mail. Now today it's a little different. There's, first of all, computer. Back then, the computer that we would have probably been as big as this room, and probably wouldn't have as much memory as your watch. So we didn't have that. Then, we didn't have cell phones. No, nobody. No. So the mail was that much more important. And this is where that transition has come about to where now, like I say, it's nothing to FaceTime. You could just come off of a mission. Okay, what's the name? You ever seen the movie American Sniper? You remember the one time he got caught on the ambush when he was talking to his wife? And he had to drop the phone and he had to go shoot, and all she could hear was the gunfire. That's the big difference. A lot of people have looked at me kind of funny because I sat there and said, today, if I was in a combat situation, there would be no phone calls, there would be no FaceTime. To me, in a sense, that makes it even harder. It's easier because you get to see that person. In that sense, that's easier. But because you get to see that person and you gotta hang up, that's hard. It's not to say you don't get the same emotions with a letter, but it's different when you can see something. It's different when you can see what you want, but you can't touch what you want. So that, in one sense, it's good that they are able to do that, but it's so bad. I think it's bad. But each person have their own opinion of it. And I'm, like I say, I'm unique, I'm weird, so.
So, given the advance of technology, which do you think is better, an actual written letter or an email? Which do you think would be better?
Basically, let's just say, and if we're cutting out, we're going to cut out the FaceTime and we're going to cut out the telephone. There basically is no difference. You're still getting that information. Personal would be the letter. Okay, what were you told, or what have you heard parents tell young kids? It don't matter how bad, how it looks. They will appreciate it because it's from you. It's handmade from you. That's why I say, between the two, if you get a letter, they're both from you, but it kind of leans a little more to the letter because I can always keep that letter with me. But if I had to have a choice between not getting a letter and getting an email, email me. You know where I am. I'll pick it up. So, in one sense, now that that's there, and there's that double-edged sword, it makes it a little easier for you to communicate. But how do you feel when you know it's easier to communicate that way, and they're not even doing that? So there's that double-edged sword. There's that yin and yang. Like it's just like when I work with kids, I used to sit there and tell them out of every negative, find something positive. I'm the type of person, I look at it both ways. When I'm put in a situation, I look at why it's positive, but then at the same time, I look at the negativity of it. So Once again, that's it, that weirdness of me. But anytime you got somebody in the service, whatever kind of way you can communicate with them, do it. Do it. And as far as packages, more the merrier. You can never get enough packages unless you send stuff that nobody wants.
Like X-Lax cookies.
Yeah, like X-Lax cookies. Oh, we were so mad with that mess. Oh my gosh. Because that meant then we had to clean up all them other, because there were guys standing in line like, hurry up. You know, it got to the point, I just can't wait, I'm just sorry. And instead of it being two that we can only use, then if somebody went to another one and like, oh my gosh, okay, that's only one we got to clean up. Then it, it ended up that way. But it was, that was just one of those things. It was, and when, especially like in boot camp, you see so many different personalities. You see so many people who, like I say, have never. There are people who probably have never been out of their city. There are probably people who have never been out of their community. When I used to work in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and there was a brother and sister, they were white, that was working there. And they said until they graduated high school, and they lived up in the north, they were from the northeastern part of East Tennessee. They said it was not until after they had graduated from high school that they saw their first black person. Then, when I was in Japan, there was a black guy that was one of the cooks who's from Watts. And he said he didn't know there was that many white people in the world. Because the only place he had ever gone was Watts and occasional go downtown. And normally when you go downtown, it's not a whole lot of people and a lot of Hispanic people. So, I mean, it's just the difference in where you live. That's why I say, like a lot of these guys, when you sit there, perfect example, we had this one guy. When we first got there, the first night, I always said it's not the first night, because what they do with you. We arrived about 1:30 in the morning. They kept us up doing stuff until 3:30 in the morning. They gave us a blanket or something, get on our racks and go sleep. 4 o'clock, 4:30, the trash can going down through the barracks. Okay, get up. We just got to bed, get up. So that first night, there's a lot of uncertainty and you spend a lot of time by yourself. Then they're like, okay, you and I sitting here saying, okay, we got 9 weeks of this. So we may as well just go ahead and start meeting, finding out, and you get little groups here. We had this one guy, and I can't remember whether or not he was from North Carolina, Virginia, or West Virginia. And you've heard the saying that they lived so far back in the woods they had to pump in sunshine. This is just about where he was from. And he was sitting in a corner by himself. And we went, I think we were there at least 5 weeks. And he was just beginning to adjust to us. But he was a non-swim. So we had something midway, which is called service week, where it's your time to go into the chow hall to serve food, and there were other jobs around the base that you did during that week. I don't know if it's good or bad. I ended up in the chaplain's office. I ended up wiping out ashtrays and sweeping the floor. How many people coming to see the chaplain? None. So for a week I did nothing. That was because the guy who gave out the jobs was a friend of mine, so he, looked out for. But this particular young man, by being a non-swim, this is the time they would take them to the pool and teach them how to swim. And he was not the only one. There was 3 or 4 other people in the company that could not swim. And they said they had gotten him to the point where they wanted him to go on the low board and jump off and then swim to the side. He got up on the board, walked to the end, wouldn't jump. And he started walking back, and the instructor got on the board to stop him. And he stopped. And the instructor walked closer, I think, to push him. When he did, he grabbed the instructor. Well, he was drowning the instructor. Another instructor went in. He was drowning 2 instructors. And I think 3rd and 4th instructor went in. And it took 3 to 4 of them to get him out of the pool. And some of the guys said when they got him out of the pool, they said to the top of his voice, he just screamed all the way running around the pool. Well, he never came back to the company. So, I mean, that's why I say it affects people different. This is, I would say, chances are he was one of these people probably who had never, a lot of people say, I'm not trying to make fun of nobody, but he was one of these people when you looked at him and he fit right into that stereotype of being one of the hillbillies out of the Appalachia. And when you sit there and look at him, you could sit there and say, he's never been out of his holler. And, and it's sad that, he had to do it that way, so. And like I say, I'm not trying to be nasty or anything like that. It's just one of those type of things where that's the way, that's the bad side of the military and stuff. I don't know which one is worse, to have that happen to you or have your first letter to come to you as a Dear John. So, it's sad, but the one thing I didn't see is 2 guys from the same town receiving mail from the same girl. Now I didn't see that.
Ooh. That would be one day. Wow.
But you hear about all kind of stories about the crews or the deployment widows. I heard about this one guy was on a sub, and they knew that the sub would be gone 6 to 9 months. Wife sitting down on the dock, bye. When the sub went and got out of sight, she went home. Jody was sitting there waiting. Sub broke. Sub turned around and came back to port. They were going to be home at least 2-3 more days. The guy went home. You know what kind of hole a .45 make at close range? And from what I can hear is that from what they said, he took the gun and when I tell you where he put it, then you can understand the activity that was going on. He stuck it in his butt. And he did pull the trigger. So you got 2 for 1. We had a guy, it was just the opposite. During that trip when I said we went to the Westpac, there was this one guy that was in so much, he loved his wife so much. He wouldn't even go out in town. When I say wouldn't go out of town, he wouldn't even go to the club and just sit there and have a drink. He stayed in the barracks. So we're sitting there in our skivvies, and he's sitting up on the top rack, and all the guys trying to get him to go. He won't go. And the joker of the squadron, sitting there talking, walking closer to him, and he was sitting on his rack like this, kind of open leg, and the joker, on the inside of one of his legs, he grabbed him and he sucked a hickey on his leg. When he got home, he almost got a divorce. The guy who did it actually had to go to his house to tell his wife, you know, we can't get him to leave the barracks. He won't even go and have a drink with us. He won't even go out and have dinner with us. That on his leg, I did. So, like I say, it's just, you know, in the military, you see all the types of people you've all only heard about. When we moved in San Diego, when we moved from the open bay barracks, we moved into dormitory style barracks. 4 men to a room, our lockers are made into the wall. We were all E3s, E4s. We had this one, he was either E5 or E6, which would be in the Army sergeant ranks and stuff. He would come home for work, get in the skivvies, and just sit on his rack. That's it. If one of us, now if you look out my window, you can see the bowling alley. And a lot of times we'd just go over to the bowling alley and get something to eat. You fly, I buy. You fly means if you go, I'll pay for it. Just bring mine back. That's all he would do. Now, there are 12 rooms on a floor. 48 men in a room, on a floor. Now, I will concede it is very possible that the other 3 people in your room never see you in the shower. What is the possibility that none of the other 47 would ever see you in the shower? We never saw him in the shower. So me and the guys in my room, we started going to get these big heavy-duty Navy scrub brushes. We were going to get scouring powder. We've been to washing. I do not understand why we were down in headquarters and we were talking to the leading chief and we were telling him what we were getting ready to do. Oh my gosh, he swelled up with pride. Those are some true sailors there. And then his mood changed. He said, but I'm glad y'all talked to me first. He said, even though I feel like y'all were probably right for doing what you're thinking about doing, he said, but if y'all had done it and he complained, I would have to, get y'all. He said, I'm glad you told us, let me take care of it. And he said, I'll go to his command first, and if that don't work, then I'll go to the force medical officer. I know that'll work. Okay, we started seeing him in the shower. So it worked. Right across the hall from me, we had just the opposite. I don't care what time of night you come into the barracks, this guy's taking a shower. And you know it's him because when he got out of the shower, he would take his towel, and he would just sit there and pop it. Pow, pow, pow. And then after, I don't know if he's trying to make it soft or what, then after he dries off, there's a dust storm of baby powder. So, I mean, you go from one extreme to the next. So, like I say, you'd be surprised at the different personalities of people you see. It's so unique. It's so unique. A psychologist or a psychiatrist could go into the military and get one heck of a thesis just looking at the people, because the mentality is so different. It truly is. So, and that's a long way from male in it. But and it's kind of funny because there are a lot of places like there. Oh, we had like a central lobby. We had there were 4 towers, and like you had a set of 4 here, parking lot, and then a set of 4 over here. And the office that was in the other one, that's where we had to go get our mail from in the afternoons when we got off work. A lot of the squadron areas, they would deliver the mail right to the squadron, and you get it there. So that's why I say, in a lot of times you can have somebody that's in the right there with you, that you slept around, and because you didn't work together, a lot of times you didn't see. Every once in a while, if someone got a good care package, they would bring it into the barracks type of thing, and some shared, some didn't. So it's just one of those type of things. And a lot of times,
which was more common?
A lot of sharing, because everybody in a sense realized that we all in here together. We same type of thing. But we understood, like with special things, no, you ain't getting none of this. Or I'm gonna take 3 quarters. You can only have this 1 quarter. So the rest of the 30 of y'all, make use of that. That type of thing. But it's just the fact that it was normally shared with somebody. No matter if it was nobody in that room with you that you cared enough about to share, there was always, you had that one buddy that you really would share things with, which became brothers with you. So, it was that case of brothers from another mother type of thing. So, and the one bad thing about the military, it's bad and good, is because you develop friendships with people that were closer than some of the bonds that you've ever had with even family members. And then when you got transferred, you can sit there and you collect all the telephone numbers, all the addresses. But 9 out of 10 times, that would be the last time you would ever see that person. And once again, last week, there was a gentleman that I was like that with. He was from Wisconsin. He was from Green Bay. And where he worked, he had access to sheets. We started running a tie-dye service in the sinks in the barracks. We would have like 6 sinks, we would use 5. Okay, y'all need to wash, and that's that one down there. We sitting there dyeing sheets and stuff. So that's how we decorated our rooms. Most of our rooms had tie-dye sheets on the walls. And it is true that the military will put a serial number on everything. My bed had a serial number. One of the most, and I don't understand this one. Okay, I can understand you can't steal a bed. But we got a wall locker that's made into the wall. Why put a serial number on it? Where is it going? But it had a serial number on it. So everything had a number. There was that accountability. We didn't have a television though. But hey, that was the dormitory barracks. in the things are popping in my head now. In the big main barracks, there was this gentleman. I can't think of his name, but he was from Louisiana, and he and I would go out into San Diego, and we'd come back on the base 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And there was this one guy that that we would that was a friend of ours. And like I say, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, we'd go to him. Crowley, wake up. What? Crowley, what time is it? And then he would run us around the barracks calling us everything but a child of God. But now one of the funniest ones is in Memphis. Like I said, they would just take these gymnasium type loose swing out lockers, these roll out lockers, and this was made out cubicles. And we would always do this to the people who had we'd do two things with people that had combination locks. If there were 2 or 3 people in a cubicle that had a combination lock, even if you had 2 different combination locks, you know which one got which combination. So we'll sit down in the club, and if we see you, enjoying your beverages a lot, we will leave before you and run back to the barracks, and we'll pull one locker out and take the other one and slide over and then slide that, and you sit there trying to open that combination with, that combination. Or either if you got a key lock, we'll go in there, and the way people found their lockers and found the lock at night, because you couldn't cut on the lights. And if you didn't have a fire watch, you didn't have nobody to shine the light. So what you do is come in there, you find the locker, and you put your hand across till you find the crack. Once you find the crack, then you bring your hand down so it hits the bar. Okay, since you're a rocket scientist and you know how to do this in the dark, we get you. We go back to the barracks, we take your locker, pull it out, turn it around backwards and push it back in. Now your locker don't have no crack.
So did everybody get up to these antics?
I mean, that was the only way you could, I don't say, there were some who carried it a little further than others. Like there was one night we sat there and watched you get drunk, especially if you slept on the top rack. And in a barracks or in a cube, there's always not going to be all of them not going to be filled. So what we do, you time went on, we'll go back and take the mattresses off of 3 or 4 beds and stack up, and then make your bed back up. We heard people like, damn, I'm drunk. I don't know if I can get up there. Oh, so. It's just fun, just having fun. But like I say, now, today, that's coming up under that, we can't do that. Can't do that type of thing. Now, one of the worst things, you ever heard, if you've seen different things, especially like with SEALs and stuff, or pilots, they, what did they call it? Pin your badge. Like with Navy SEALs, you get your crescent, and everybody come up and that's pinning it to you. Now they did do that. Now that one, I can understand why they stopped that one. But yeah, that was something that, that did happen. But like I say, when you have a full bay, you can do all kind of stupid stuff to everybody. And just, it's weird. It's just weird. Just, like I said, it's just having a good time. That's the military for you. And the more fun you can have and make out of something, the easier it's going to be, and the more you can adjust, type of thing. Until you got that box of Baby Ruths to come there, or that box of Butterfingers. And you know, a lot of that stuff, like I said, you couldn't share. I mean, you couldn't eat all that to yourself. So, and you had your special buddies. When you got something, you just, okay, here's 4 for you, 4 for you, 4 for me, 4 for, okay, that's it. That's that little group. So, you know, you just spread it out. So you knew when I did that to you, I knew when you got something, here's 4 for you. No, that it just went around. So, but yeah, it was a lot of sharing, and even to the point, there were some guys who would even share the letters. They would take their letter because somebody didn't get a letter, and okay, here. There are a lot of guys who met their future wives through somebody that they were friends with. Okay, hey, my sister been writing me. And you start seeing the picture. Who's that? That's my sister. Tell her to write me. There you go. And there's a commercial that comes on, and I can't remember right now. It's a lady that's got a ring. And she said, this is the last gift my brother sent me. And weeks after I received it, he got killed. And his best friend made sure that, not after she got it, but after he bought it, he got killed. He made sure that I received it, and she gave it to me. Now, he gave me 2 good things. He gave me the last thing that my brother gave me, and she ended up marrying his best friend. So there's a lot of ties from the military that are a good tie. It's like my best friend from high school. It was about a year and a half ago. And this was the first time that he and I had talked to each other in over 20 years. And when we were on the phone, and when his wife got on the phone, she told me, she said, I knew it was you. I'm like, well, how do you know it was me? She said, you're the only person that he smiled like that for. She said, when I walked in and I saw the smile on his face, I knew he was talking to you. What was sad is last year we lost her. As we say in the culture, she became an ancestor. And, but you know, it's just one of those things, and he credited me. He tells all of his kids, his grandkids, I'm the one that hooked them up. And in a sense, it was, because she and I kind of, and she would have probably carried it further. But at that time, just like I wasn't in the mindset for college, I was not in the mindset for staying with no one person. And I do remember telling her, I said, you know, for what you want, you better go to him. And she went to him, and like I say, the rest is history. They stayed together. So, stayed together, and 2 kids later. And out of all those years, we've always been just like that. Even to the day, it's one of those type of sayings, you know, what a friend is one of these people. And like they say, you can not see them for 20 years and you get on the telephone and it's just like y'all been talking all week. You just catch right back up. You don't miss a step. And that's just like I'll say, a friend is, if I can come to you and I sit there and say, hey, I need $1,500. And the first thing a friend is, you're not going to ask me why I need it or when I'm getting it back. Because you know, as a friend, I would not be coming to you asking you that if I didn't need it. And that's the way, you know, he and I are. We've always been that way. I call his mom, he called my mom. And he'd laugh and used to sit there and say, there would be days I know he's not home. I'll just go and sit in his room until he come home. I'll come home, there he is in the room. But that's, you know, you don't have those kind of friends a lot. And the military have developed a lot of that type of friendship. Really has. But yeah. A lot of it come by mail too.
Well, that's pretty much everything that I had wanted to ask. I thank you greatly for agreeing to do another interview.
No. I mean, like I said, not to the extent of where you are now, but I've been there and done that, what you're doing. And also, as a historian and as a genealogist, and with the African proverb that we have as when an elder dies, a library burn. Okay, right now what you're doing here and what you have done is you've come to the library and you're checking books out. So, and right now you're ensuring that that part of the library is not gone. And this is what we have to, you know, do. We have to collect this. Now, who knows who will read this or see this sometime in the future and sit here and laugh just like you and I have been doing all day. Especially when they hear about them chocolate chip cookies. No, first of all, they're going to probably have to try and find out, what's chocolate chip? I mean, what's X-Lax?
I feel like if anything's going to survive into the future, diuretics are.
Oh yes. But hey, that's the way it is, so you need my Hancock.
Yes, please.